You are listening to an episode of Megan is Not a Parent But. Today's episode is brought to you by Positive Parenting Class Pass, 6 simple positive parenting classes to kickstart your positive parenting journey. You can start today at bekindcoaching.com/classpass. In today's episode, we will be chatting about verbal and nonverbal communication. So get cozy, grab a notebook, and let's dig in. Can we just take a pause to celebrate? I'll edit this out. Celebrate that I stuck the intro. Welcome to Megan is Not a Parent But, the podcast where I, your host, Megan Ford, former early childhood educator turned positive parenting coach, helps parents just like you learn how to deal with your strong-willed child's difficult behavior. I've been described from my clients as a blend between Brene Brown and Miss Frizzle, you know, the one from the Magic School Bus. I help bring awareness and hold space for the hard conversations and make big concepts like behavior and relationships and temperaments easy to understand and easy to implement. If you're a parent who struggles with your child's loud, dramatic, disruptive, over-the-top behavior, but don't think a parenting coach would help you because those are just for the bad parent or those parents, then this episode is especially for you. I invite you to grab a journal, grab a cozy blanket, a warm beverage, and enjoy what you're about to explore. All right, friends, here's where I want to start today's episode. I want to share a common phrase that was said to me by the parents whose children I taught back when I was a teacher. If you're not aware, I was 14 years in early childhood education and development. And whenever there was a child who had challenging behavior in my classroom, undoubtedly they would see growth and success as we integrated and supported them in the classroom setting. And when it came time for parent-teacher conferences, I would report on the successes and spaces of growth, opportunities for growth that every child had. And parents would come to me and say, how did you get them to do that? We've been trying to get them to do that at home and we haven't gotten it to work. So how did you get them to do that? And I knew that every time someone asked me to do that, what they were really asking me was, what do I need to say to get them to listen to me? Just give me the words to say. I experienced this recently when I was with some family and I put a child down for her nap and came down there like, wow, she went down for you. And I said, yeah, we just connected, chatted, we said it clearly. And they just said, what did you say to her? What was it? What were the words that you used? And I said, well, I mean, here's what I said, but it's really just about setting and getting on the same page. Like that's really where my efforts were, was just getting on the same page with them. And they're like, okay. And then we spent some time kind of unpacking that. So that's what I really wanted to dig in today, piggybacking off of last week's episode, that a person's behavior is giving you information. And when we can understand and listen and do our part to understand what is being said to us, understand what is being conveyed to us, then so much magic can happen. So as they say, just tell me what to say and I'll say it. I see this all the time on TikToks, in social media. When I have consults with people, they just say, what is it that I need to say? And they write down what it is that they need to say. And yes, that is a part, but I'm going to tell you that is the smallest part. It is the smallest part. And we're going to get into more of that in a bit. So I want you to know that if you too are just craving the things to say, like just tell me what to say, you're not alone, but that is just the smallest part of the puzzle. Because what I say is that it is not the thing. It is not the script. It is not the phrase. It is not the words. It's what you do with the thing. It's not the thing. It's what you do with the thing. If I've said it once, I've said it 100 times. It's not the thing. It's what we do with the thing. I was talking about this yesterday on TikTok Live. It's not the iPad. It's not the iPad. It's what we do with the iPad. It's the boundaries around the iPad. It's not the thing. It's what we do with the thing. And when we're talking about connected communication, having a connected relationship, the dirty truth bomb here is that there is no faking it. Ooh, man. There is no faking it, meaning you cannot outsource the work and you cannot buy the outcome. Someone else cannot do the work for you, just the same as you cannot do the work for someone else. Having connected communication is about balancing and attuning the giving and the receiving, the speaking and the listening. And the few episodes before this episode, I dug deep into listening. Why? Because listening is what we want to skip over first. We began with listening because it's rushed. I really honed in on that because that was the part that's often an afterthought, right? When we say they're not listening to us and I say, well, are you listening to them? Sometimes that question catches people off guard. Like, what? I don't need to listen to them. They're the child. Woo! Well, in my world, the adults got to do it first. So that's why we started there. We started with listening to get attuned and kind of break down that. So now we can focus on the speaking part, honing back into that visual of tennis. We're trying to play a fun tennis game, back and forth, back and forth. We hit the ball, we serve the ball, they hit the ball, they volley the ball, points get assigned, people win, people lose. But in the communication style, we're focusing on finding that win-win together, having a fun, joyful game together. So last week's episode, we broke down behavior as communication. And when we think about behavior as communication, we start to become aware that we can now start to attune again to listening to behavior. What is their behavior telling us? What are we noticing? What are we interpreting? What are we observing? What sense are we making? What labels are we assigning? How is that guiding how we are showing up? And how can we reattune, realign, get clear, get better skills so that then magic happens? So to revisit last week's topic, if we think about this, what might stomping feet with a closed fist be telling you? If you came upon someone either within conversation, within the tennis game with you, within the conversation with you, or even watching someone else's conversation, and you start to see them stomping their feet, closing their fists, what might that be telling you? And that could be an adult or a child here. For me, it might signal protest, disgust, disapproval, upset. It's giving me information like, ooh, something is not right over there. The inverse, what might a big hug, a slow breath, a cuddle up be telling you? Either watching it or experiencing it. Perhaps it's communicating enjoyment, affection, approval, joy. And finally, what might yelling at someone be telling you? When you yell at someone else or when they yell at you, what might that be telling you? For me, it signals anger, overwhelm, loss of control, and a call out for support needs. This is a balancing of the verbal communication and the nonverbal communication, and that's what we're going to talk about and break down today. We're going to talk through what is verbal communication, what does that entail, but then also nonverbal communication, and what are the components of that, and then which one speaks loudest? Which one do we hear loudest? And I think by the title, nonverbal speaks louder, I think it gives you a little clue, but I think the percentage of which nonverbal speaks louder may surprise you. So let's dig into verbal communication. Verbal communication, by definition, is the use of words to share a message with people. And that can be written or it can be spoken. It's the words written out. Verbal communication engages our left brain mode, and it's the logical center. It's a linear sequence of information. It's very black or white. So here are the potential blind spots with verbal communication. The blind spots here is making sure that the words we are using really convey our intention and meaning. Sometimes I recently at book club, I had this where, what was the word I was saying? I wanted to say prioritize, but then what I said was pariah size. And then I looked up the definition and learned that pariah actually was in alignment with what we were talking about. A pariah, someone on the outside, someone who'd been cast away. And it really fit in, but I was like, wait, no, is that what I want to say? Is that what I mean? Because what I was communicating, the words that I was communicating, I really wanted to make sure that it was communicating exactly what I meant, the intention I was saying. And sometimes for me, I get pretty creative in that space. I was just thinking back to like how many words I've made up. So we say this, and there's a lot of time and energy invested in that because we are working to getting on the same page with the other person. It's to have a shared mutual understanding of those words, making sure that we're playing from the same space. That's why oftentimes I will define a word. I will speak the definition aloud so that we both know we have a shared understanding of those words. So when we think about verbal communication, we can break it down into 4 different relationships almost. We can think about the interpersonal relationship of verbal communication, the interpersonal, so interpersonal communication, small group communication, and public speaking. So what does intrapersonal mean? Intrapersonal is one to self. It's the way that you talk to yourself, the words that you use to yourself. Think about the words that you use to yourself when you have a big accomplishment, when you do something hard. What are the words you say to yourself? I know for me, I think like, yes, I did it. Like, fuck yeah, I did it. I'm so excited. Woohoo. Like, way to go. That was hard and you did it. Also, think about the words that you say to yourself when you made a mistake. And how are we talking and communicating to ourselves when we make a mistake? And I know for me, that's where I go really quick into like, God damn it, Megan, what's wrong with you? Why did you do that? Ugh. That's where we come into self-compassion. We can now start to meet ourselves in that space and use our intrapersonal communication to soothe ourselves. That's like all of our inner child, inner teenager, inner self work. It's the communication we have with ourselves, so our inner voice, our inner thoughts, and our beliefs, the things that pop up. Paying attention to the words we are using. Interpersonal communication is the communication that you have on a one-to-one level. It is between 2 people. So this may be the conversations, the words you use with your child. Think about the words you use when they make an accomplishment. Think about the words you use when they make a mistake. What about with your partner, your friend, your coworker? What are the words that you use for them when they share a joy and they share a stress? When you see them make an accomplishment and when you see them make a mistake. I guess they would have an accomplishment, not make an accomplishment, but I don't know. Sometimes people make accomplishments. There it was again, me catching to make sure, wait, am I communicating with the words that I'm using? Am I communicating my point? Let's go into small group. Small group communication is one to few. So it's the communication we have with a small group. This like flashed me back to every small group project in college where undoubtedly one person gets stuck doing the work and everybody just kind of piggybacks off of them. I think sometimes I was a leader, but also sometimes I was the piggybacker, depending on how invested I was on the topic, right? Oop, there it was. My behavior was communication. So the communication we have with a small group. So like at work, you probably have been on a small team. It could be the shift you work. It could be the department you're in. It could be the location you're at. That's a small group. It also could be a small group as in a family meeting, which is a strategy that I use with my clients and with my Clear and Kind parents. We advocate for family meetings. It's a different communication pattern because it's involving everybody in the family, getting them on the same page. And it also could mean also one to few, meaning into a small group, like a neighborhood or a social group that you're part of. Thinking like a book club or, mom's night out or a birthday party with friends. Those dynamics are a small group. And then finally, we think about public speaking, and that's one to many. So if you notice, one to self, one to one, one to few, one to many. Public speaking is the communication we have with a large audience. It's a presentation to a room full of people that you may or may not know personally. Podcasts are interesting because it invites in all different types of communication. For me, as the person giving it, it's focusing on my intrapersonal communication. How am I talking to myself in process of recording this episode? Interpersonal is the tone that I want to use. I want it to feel like you and I are talking one-to-one. I want it to be small and intimate. I want to be able to ask questions that invite in this space of intimacy between you and I. It's also, for this podcast, a one-to-few, because right now I have 7 people in the Zoom room with me recording. So it's one-to-few. We have a small group. But then it's also one-to-many, because those who are watching the replay are listening to it from a one-to-many space, where I'm putting out the message to a larger audience that I may or may not know. It's a very dynamic process. Brain break moment. All right, I know that I can go deep way fast. So let's just take a pause here to take a deep breath in and let it out. And listen while I let you know that this episode is brought to you by me, Megan, and my Positive Parenting Class Pass. Positive Parenting Class Pass are 6 simple positive parenting classes to kickstart your positive parenting journey. Those classes include Positive Parenting 101, which is a class that is just designed to give you the first steps in what positive parenting is and what it is not. Second class is Emotional Validation. In this class, we dig into how can we show up to have your child feel seen and heard in their lived experience. The third class is Setting Boundaries, all about communicating, enforcing, and allowing testing of your secure and consistent and firm boundaries. The fourth class is a class called Ending Entitlement. Inside of this class, we dig into how we are showing up using tools of entitlement and how we can start to release those tools and begin practicing tools of empowerment and choice. And we know that what we put down, they're going to pick up. The fifth class is a class all about natural consequences. This is a class that gets very clear, and you'll walk away knowing what an imposed consequence is, what a logical consequence is, and most importantly, how to begin utilizing natural consequences so your children begin learning from their lived experience. And the final class is a class all about apologizing. I like to say that connection is the most skipped over step and recovery is the least utilized step. So in that step, you'll start to learn how to show up and use impactful and effective apologies so that your child knows that you see them and hear them and care about them. If you are looking to begin your journey today, then I highly encourage you go to bekindcoaching.com/classpass and dig into the classes starting today. As my free gift, you will receive Raising Respectful Kids, which is my 3-part video series all about how to stop focusing on adding on more decorations to your child and to you and to your relationship, and instead starting to reinforce and build a solid and secure foundation together. I can't wait to hear all of your amazing wins from the steps that you take inside of Positive Parenting Class Pass. All right, ready to get back to our episode? Before we get back, let's take one more deep breath together. And take a deep breath in and let it out. And let's go. So moving on from verbal communication, now let's hone in on nonverbal communication. And in nonverbal communication, it's the ways in which we convey information about our emotions, our attitudes, our thoughts, without the use of verbal methods, without written or spoken word. Nonverbal communication lives in our right brain mode. It's the more creative process of it. Nonverbal communication is the immersion and expression of our inner world. It's not just the words we are using, it's how we're using them. So the potential blind spots here is making sure that our words, the words that we're using, and our expression of those words are aligned. This way of communication is colorful and it's a spectrum. It's open to interpretation. And it's full of varying values, meaning It's very dynamic. It requires being present at the moment to really align so that you can effectively communicate. Have you ever spoken to someone and you ask them, hey, how you doing? I haven't seen you in a while. And they're like, yeah, I'm great. I'm fine. But you can hear something's off with that. You're like, oh, are you sure? There's a little bit of doubt in you. So you're like, really? Is everything okay? And they're like, yeah, I'm fine. Everything's fine. Sometimes that misalignment is the blind spot. And maybe if you're not very close with this person, maybe you kind of back out off, or maybe you're like, are you sure? Something seems like is off and we want to like kind of press on. Along with if something not so great has happened and you say, hey, I've been thinking about you. How are you doing? And they're like, oh my gosh, I am so great. Everything's wonderful. You're like, but you just, lost something. You just, maybe they lost a promotion. Let's go with that. Maybe they lost a promotion and you say like, didn't you just go through a huge loss promotion? And they're like, yeah, but silver lining, everything's great. Everything happens for a reason. You're like, something feels out of alignment. Now I'm shifting into like not trusting this. Something's not there. It's not just the words they use, but it's how they are saying it. And the most interesting part about this is that most communication experts agree that 70 to 93% of all of our communication is nonverbal. Dang, that statistic, when I read that was like, poof, what? Sometimes when we think that we're hiding something, we're not doing such a great job hiding it. And you know who has an even thinner filter? Children. Children are excellent detectives at this. They are excellent at picking up on the misalignments and holding you accountable for getting into alignment. So when we think about our verbal, nonverbal communication, the verbal is the words on the screen, the words that we're using. The nonverbal communication is the font in which we're using them. And depending on the font, depending on the boldness, depending on the color, depending on the size, depending on is it italic? Is it straight? Is there sans, non-sans? Is it italic? Maybe I said that twice. Conveys a different mood. So the qualities of nonverbal communication are eye contact, facial expressions, tone of voice, gestures, posture, timing, and intensity. If we think about it like a font, it's all the different variants of a font. So with eye contact, what we mean here is focus of visual attention. Where is the focus of visual attention? Why is it there? Are they avoiding? Are they soothing? What are they looking at? One of my biggest pet peeves in the classroom was when children were made to look at the teacher. And I remember, oh man, flashback. I remember this one day, there was a child in one of our morning meetings, and he was just fidgeting, wiggling, couldn't stay still, couldn't stay on topic. And I could see that the teacher who was presenting information was starting to get agitated, upset. But whenever they would call on the student would have the answer. But visually, it didn't look like they were paying attention. And I remember I pulled the student to the back of the classroom while my co-teacher was teaching, and I just gave him a piece of paper and a pencil. I don't know if that car just picked up, but that was some nonverbal communication right there. Anyways, I put him in the back of the classroom and I gave him a piece of paper and a pencil, and I just asked him to draw what he heard. I said, draw what you hear the teacher talking about. And sure enough, he was tapped in. He was using his visual attention in a way that helped focus and hone in so that he could pay attention. And by the end of it, he had a really awesome picture. He loved to draw pictures of cars in detail. And by helping focus his visual attention, he was actually able to pay attention to the information that was being presented. But we had to realign and kind of refocus our own interpretation of what his nonverbal behavior was communicating. I got kind of distracted with that car. So I hope that all tracked. The second quality of nonverbal communication is our facial expressions, which means all of our facial movements. It's the movement of our mouth, it's the frown of our brow, it's the clicking of our lips, it's the smile, the frown, the confusion. It's all of the little movements of our face. Is there affect? Is there no affect? Are they just kind of speaking in not only monotone, but like, do they have no facial movements? We start to pick up on what all of that starts to convey and communicate to us. The third quality is tone of voice. So it's how you emphasize the words. Tone of voice, takes me back to inner teenager. When I'm like, I'm fine. It's like, tone of voice. I don't know if you sound fine to me, or, fine, I'll do it. I can't even count on my hands how many times I heard, don't take that tone with me. And I would quick back and be like, well, don't take that tone with me. I think I've always been the mirror, and I think I'm just starting to really lean into it. But tone of voice is a nonverbal cue. Again, thinking about the decorations, the formatting of the font. The fourth quality of nonverbal is gestures. So gestures is what you do with your body. Are your gestures big and exaggerated? Are they small? Do you talk with your hands? Do you use expressions or non-expressive? What is this all conveying? And is what it's conveying in alignment with the words and the message in which you're saying? The fifth quality is posture. And so posture is how you hold your body. Are you slouched? Are you hunched over? Are you sitting up straight? Are you kind of leaning in? Are you leaning out? I always think I love true crime, and true crime people really break down nonverbal cues, but especially like body postures in interviews, and even interviews with couples. What is their body language communicating about their relationship, about the quality of their relationship, about their comfortability with each other? The sixth quality is timing, and timing is the pace of your talking. So are you kind of slow, thoughtful in your pacing of the message? And what might that communicate? A second ago, when the car went by and I got distracted and I lost where I was, what was that communicating to you? It probably was communicating like, oh, she got distracted. Oh, here, yep, there's a loud noise. I can start to infer and interpret what's going on, not just by the words she's using. So timing is a way of communicating. It's a way of emphasizing those words that we're using. Or on the flip of being very slow, am I talking really fast and rushed? And am I not taking breaths? And am I just talking and I just want to dump out all the information? And am I just going to try to jam in everything without taking a breath and without pausing and just getting it out? And what might that communicate to you? What message might that be sending? And finally, the intensity. The intensity is the vividness of speaking. The intensity is, what are the words we're using? Am I saying that I'm mad and angry, or am I saying that I'm infuriated and hostile? And what is the vividness of that that's being communicated? Am I saying that I'm happy and I enjoy it? Or am I saying I'm enthralled and I love it so much? Is there a difference in that intensity and how you are taking this information from me? I think about intensity. Intensity sometimes for me, I won't say it gets me in trouble, but sometimes I'm surprised by the intensity of which I speak about something. And this happened to me yesterday inside of the Facebook group during Morning Intentions. Someone asked a question on TikTok Live and I was like, I was intense. I honed in. I was like, we are going to talk about it. And we are going to talk about it because I care to talk about it. And you know what I was getting in the comments on Facebook? Danny, who's here in the room with us now, Danny left fire emojis. And she's like, I hear this in a new way. Even though I've been listening to it the same way, I hear it in a new way. And she maybe heard it in a new way because I was saying it in a new way. It's not about just the words you're speaking and reading and listening to and hearing. It's in which the person who is conveying it is conveying it. It's all of that. Like I said, it's not just the words, but the fonts we use for those words. So now when we think about what do I need to say to get them to listen to me, going back to how we opened it, as we close it, what do I need to say to get them to listen to me? I really want you to start to think about asking, how do I get in alignment of my communication? How do I make sure that the verbal communication, the words that I'm speaking, the words that I'm using are in alignment with my nonverbal communication, the expression of those words that we're speaking? And how do we get those in alignment so that not only are we seeking to validate, but so that the child feels validated, so that we're speaking to support, so that the child feels supported, so that we're speaking to understand, so that the child is understood. That way we're having effective communication. We're playing an effective game. And those moments of misalignment, when things are stressful, when there's resistance, when it's hard, those are moments of misalignment. That misalignment, that communication of a behavior is signaling that, whoop, something's out of alignment. We got to get back in alignment. Something, it's either the words we're saying or it's how we're saying it. It's asking for us to pay attention to that. That's why I think a lot of the work that I do is pulling us out of the surface. It's out of the tips and tricks and hacks into what is below the surface, what is supporting that. So in closing, I want you to consider what feels in alignment with your communication. What does that feel like in your body? When you know that what you're giving and what you're receiving is on the same track, when you're on the same page. When it's like, ooh, yes, what I'm saying, you're hearing, what you're saying, I'm hearing, and we are in alignment with each other. In the same way, what feels out of alignment? Where does it feel stressful? Where does it feel struggling? Where does it feel like a brick wall? Where do we feel trapped? Where do we feel like we're complaining? Where do we feel like things need to change? And then I want you to consider what needs to happen to get closer to alignment with everyone that you value communicating with. I'm going to say that last one again. What needs to happen? What needs to change? What needs to grow? What needs to adjust to get closer to alignment with everyone that you value communicating with? If that's not a question of accountability, I don't know what is. All right, friends, coming up next week. Ooh, next week is actually my birthday, March 1st, stepping into Pisces. And I actually think that this may be, I feel like I might say this every time, but next week is definitely an episode that will be a labor of love. Like, I love this conversation next week. So next week's topic is, what is regulation? What is co-regulation? What is dysregulation? And what is auto-regulation? And why does this matter in all of these things? Better yet, if you want to come join live and stay for the Q&A after, you can find the Zoom room link posted in our Facebook community, Positive Parenting with Megan Ford. If you've been listening and you've been taking notes, I'm sure that you want to share your work, because I love to see it. I love to see your thoughts and takeaways. And so if you want to share them, there's 3 ways to share them. You can leave a review on Apple Podcasts. You can share your takeaways on social media and tag me in them. And you can also share your thoughts inside our dedicated post inside of our Facebook community, Positive Parenting with Megan Ford. And if you've made it to this far, I want to say thank you. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for prioritizing the time and staying to the end. My mission in life is to help support parents in feeling supported and empowered in doing this work. This podcast, my Facebook community, and my programs and book club all help parents work through the phases of awareness, education, and practice. I'm here to do the work that's below the surface and support you in doing that work as well. If you are ready to take the next step, the next aligned step is by joining Raising Respectful Kids. Raising Respectful Kids is a 3-part video series about what positive parenting is and isn't, how to determine if your family is making a positive impact, and how to begin showing up in big ways to make a positive impact on your family's relationship together. And you can get started today with a free class at bekindcoaching.com/class or free class. Excuse me. If you join ClassPass, you get Raising Respectful Kids for free. All right, friends. Thank you for being here, and I can't wait to see you next week. Bye, friends.